And it's welcome back to We Love Ugly Data, the Deep Analysis podcast. It's episode 33 or series 4, episode 11, if you prefer. But more importantly, it's one of our end of year kind of special editions. November each year now is the tradition. I say tradition, it's the second time we've done it this way, but that's an emerging tradition at least, where we will cover our innovation awards, which at the time of recording this haven't been actually announced, but by the time you're watching this will have been announced. So we're doing this slightly ahead of the game. Now, those of you who've come along to the first time, because it's the Innovation Awards, we're welcome. Those of you who are back again, you deserve a medal of your own, an award of your own for coming back. But you'll know that part of the format of the podcast is talking about the format of the podcast. And you need to pay attention because the format is different this month because it's a special. It's still 30 minutes or thereabouts, depending how verbose or otherwise we are. And we do tend to specialize in verbosity. So 30 minutes-ish, 2 award winners rather than 3 topics this month. But, you know, everything else kind of more or less works the same. We're all on this month. So Alan is live and direct from a hotel room in Washington, D.C. Hi, Alan.
Hello.
And Dan is live and direct from the middle of nowhere in Cornwall. Hi, Dan.
Dan's on mute, but I'll say hi on his.
Oh, hey, Matt.
Hey, Dan. Okay, that's great. That's all gone well. Let's get on to talking about the Innovation Award. So, Alan, this is, I don't know how many years we've done it. In fact, rather than me trying to guess how many years we've done it, why don't you talk a little bit as an introduction to the Innovation Awards, what they are and why we do them for people who are new to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the 6th year of doing them. I'm not absolutely sure.
It's 6. Okay.
Pretty sure it's 6. But yeah, so the Innovation Awards came out of, well, actually this goes back a very, very, very long time to when I started as an analyst. I remember turning up at an IBM office in New York and to talk about their document management system with IBM, and the guy says to me, "Oh, you picked the perfect day. We won an award for our document management system. So whatever you say," you know, he was joking, but like whatever you say, we're award winners, you know. I said, "Oh, that's great." He says, "Yeah, as soon as we pay $15,000. I was like, "What?" Yeah, and you know, this is the thing. We could have our website covered in awards because I won't say it's weekly, but certainly every 2 weeks, certainly every single month, we are award winners. And you know, I get an email saying, "Oh, congratulations, you're the market leaders in thought leadership for IDP or whatever." And then, of course, you know, then there's the fee, and so awards are for sale. So anyway, I wanted to do something different. That's the point here. And initially I thought, well, let's have a viewers award. Let's have a vote thing. And I thought, no, let's not do that, because without naming them, anybody who's listening will know them. But there's a lot of websites out there that say, you know, hey, these products are, you know, a bit like a TripAdvisor thing. Yeah. These products are voted for by the users. Well, I happen to know for a fact that when any product gets on there, that company gets everybody, including their nephews and half nieces, to start putting in reviews.
Sure.
And actually loads of conferences you go to, there's literally a booth there saying, you know, fill this in and say something nice about us and we'll give you a gift. So I didn't want to do that. So it came round to, well, okay, what were the wow moments, right? It's all about innovation. What's something that really grabs our attention? And I thought, well, that probably isn't too difficult to do. And so there's no application fee. There's no fee at all.
There's no lavish awards dinner to attend or to buy a table for.
Which is actually a bit of a shame. That would actually be nice. But no, we haven't done that. There is a very nice award. There's a glass trophy, which is quite expensive one, actually. It's very nice. Blah, 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 blah. But the long story short is that at some point near the end of each year, we get together as a team. We say, okay, which were the ones that wowed us this year, right? So, but to take just personal bias out of it, I spent probably way too much time coming up with an actual methodology, which has actually served us well. So maybe it was worth the time. So basically it's 4 categories. Does it solve a problem? Seems pretty obvious, right? But lots of innovations, you go, well, that's clever. What am I supposed to do with it, right? So does it solve a problem? Can this product actually provide a solution to a difficult, costly, or complex issue. And you'd be surprised that that wipes out so many possible winners.
Yeah.
Does it apply ingenuity, right? Because we're talking about innovation here, right? Is it an effective application of something that's novel? You know, does it meet unarticulated needs, new needs? So, you know, ingenuity. And this is a really important one, the third one. Does it add value?
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause again, there's a lot of things where you go, well, yeah, but why would I bother doing that? I'm already doing this. So is it, you know, able to enhance and add value, blah, 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 blah. And then finally, which is probably the least of them, if I'm being honest, does it show flexibility? Because, you know, can it actually adapt to changing environments? So there is actually a methodology, and that's all in the free to download, absolutely free to download report. And typically we've had between, I can come back to this maybe at the end, but we've typically, I think the maximum was like 10 or 11 in year one. And
Right.
and it's typically been around half a dozen each year, because we do take it's surprising when you actually look through the calendar, when you look through how many briefings we took and everything. We take a lot of briefings in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, just to finish on this, the fun thing is when we come to say to each other, who were the ones that wowed us? It's a surprisingly straightforward process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, just to give a shout out, they didn't win this year, but they have in past years. Hyperscience, you know, and if you read our stuff on hyperscience, if you look back at the past awards, if you look at their write-ups, you'll see why. You can be an arch competitor, but you would probably go, yeah, fair enough, you know. So they are the wow moments of the year. That's how I like to put it. And this year there were more than 2 wows, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But when we applied the methodology, only 2 made it through. And there was a couple of others that, had their timing been better, might have scraped it in and maybe will next year.
Well, okay, and maybe at the end of this pod, we'll circle back a little bit to next year, and maybe looking ahead to some of the things we're looking for next year. But let's get into this year's first. As you can see on the screen, for those of you who are watching, but if you're not listening, if you're listening rather than watching, the 2 award winners this year are Infrrd and LatticeFlow. On screen again, we will have a 2025 download form for the full report, and a blog post to go with it. On screen is last year's one, because again, we're recording this just a little bit ahead of the announcement, and that isn't live yet. But in order to get hold of this, it'll just be a fill in the brief form, and we will then you'll have access to the report. For each, just a little mention again for people who are new to it. For every vendor, as Alan says, we take a lot of briefings during the year. We write a lot of vendor analysis reports off the back of this. For customers of Deep Analysis, for subscribers of Deep Analysis, you have access to all of them. We've been doing this for nearly 10 years. I think next year is the 10th year.
Yeah.
So there is a lot in that archive. We add them in sort of lumps of a number every few months during the year. So across the year, you might get, you know, a double-figure number. And in fact, last week we popped the new ones on neutrinos, on Atalia, Automation Anywhere, and Salesforce's IDP products. This is the sort of stuff we normally talk about in the blog. We'll cover those probably into January next year now, by the time we get to talk about those. But, you know, just an example of what we're kind of publishing, and all those are available. Anyway, let's get into the winners themselves. First of those winners is Infrrd. And Dan, maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about Infrrd, how they came to win an award, but maybe also, if you'd like to, a little bit about how they sit in their broader market and what's going on in that market that makes them stand out and be award worthy.
Yeah, happy to, Matt. I was pleased that we selected Infrrd for this award. As we've talked about several times on the podcast, we talk to a lot of vendors. And I cover my little patch, IDP, we cover hundreds of vendors now. And so it's become difficult to separate anybody out because the technology itself is sort of become level set. everybody's using their own machine learning models, and now they're using LLMs and VLMs in conjunction with it. So technology-wise, I haven't seen much new. Where we're seeing innovation is taking all that technology and applying it to some specific vertical applications, which is something we love to talk about at Deep Analysis, right? So Infrrd, let me give you the backstory quickly.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago when I first came across Infrrd, and it wasn't probably the best for them. I came across this ad, or the ad found me probably in Instagram, and you know how I hate when people advertise.
Oh, yes, we covered that on the pod a couple of months.
Social media. So this company said, guaranteed 100% data accuracy. We will deliver that for you at no extra cost.
Well, that's asking for trouble, Dan, isn't it?
Yes, and I wrote about that, saying, there's certain things that just aren't true. One is unlimited. The second is free, and the third is 100% data accuracy. Absolutely. So those are the things that I look at as just, you can't get there. You can talk about it. And so when I met the CEO from Infrrd the first time we talked, I found out that this was really a serious software development company, despite that kind of dodgy marketing ploy that they kicked off a couple of years ago. So one of the reasons why I put them up for the award this year was they have, I think, 12 patents now on very specific document AI patterns and models and techniques. And the CEO has set a goal for his team to have 100 patents within the next 5 years. And most of those are probably going to come on the agentic side because they're doing a lot of work there now. So when we talk about innovation, the first thing I look at is, does this company, do they innovate internally? Are they creating things? And at what scale are they doing that? Infrrd's development team, I think, deserved a little bit of recognition in terms of how they've actually been able to get so many patents and the ones they've put forward. The other thing that happened was I give away this kind of funny little award every year called Best IDP Demo.
Right. Okay. And
to tip our regular listeners off, it should not have an invoice in it. We all know that,
yes,
right?
Yes. That's a callback to a podcast of about 2 years ago, but yes.
Exactly. So Infrrd gave me a demo last year, and they didn't have any invoices, thank goodness, but they showed me this cool thing they were doing with AutoCAD drawings. But these had been scanned in. These were old drawings, big, huge sheets of paper that had been scanned in a large format scanner. And they had managed to come up with a system that was able to get inside those drawings, which are quite complex, layered, right? And do some really cool data extraction and retrieval and document understanding of these huge drawing files. And I've done some AEC products myself in the past, and I thought it was genius, the approach they were taking. So they were one of our Demo of the Year award recipients for 2024. And then I talked to them again this year to follow up and find out, and they made significant strides with agentic operations. We're always trying to be very careful at Deep Analysis to use the word agentic or agent, because so many companies are using that, but it's really not an agent. Infrrd showed me some things where they are developing agents, and they've got a goal to basically have hundreds of co-workers, they call them, not replacing humans, but coming alongside the humans as co-workers that they plan to deliver. So you take all that together, what they've done with the construction industry, and also what they've done with a very, very difficult use case, which is mortgage loan files, one of the hardest problems to crack in our industry. And they've advanced that with some of their technology. to the point where they've been able to get some big wins. So I saw that as another example that this is an innovative development team. And yeah, there you go. So that's what I think of Infrrd. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, congratulations, Infrrd. Alan, as the kind of the chair of the committee of judges, but again, coming in that capacity now, talk a little bit, maybe not just about Infrrd, but also just briefly about how this fits into broadly other trends that we're viewing, because Dan and I have discussed previously about how IDP is probably the number one and probably only area around generative AI where people are making profit, not turnover, but actually making a profit. It's a profitable line, and it's one of those areas of technology that doesn't get a lot of coverage, not by deep analysis, but outside of deep analysis, but it's an area of high activity for enterprises.
Yeah, it is, and in fact, there's very few briefings on any topic that doesn't actually have an IDP module now.
Yeah,
and that's, I mean, in the simplest of terms, and I know probably anybody who listens to a podcast like this would know this, but it turns out that the wider world doesn't. I hate this stat because I don't believe it to be real, but 80% of data is unstructured. Whatever the figure, it's certainly the biggest.
It's a lot of data.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
And I was interviewed for a thing called AI Street the other week, a financial sort of publication. Anyway, long story short, when I was pointing this out, and the response to that interview was quite interesting. My point was, and it's a bit clumsy, but when we think about data lakes and business intelligence and big data and blah 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 blah, right? Mm-hmm. all of this stuff of the last 20 years, yeah, that's the 20%. So now suddenly we've got access to the 80%. So IDP's huge, and it's going to be huge for permanently for all intents and purposes. I think, in future years, assuming we're all still here, the question is going to be, is it still IDP? Is it a feature? Is it a function? I don't know, right? But the fact is, if you put it, let me put it this way, and this is a bit hyperbolic, but I think it's fair. We can talk about tokens, we can talk about LLMs, agentic AI, whatever. The reality is, IDP is what has changed everything. IDP is what is driving this AI boom. It might not get talked about. People don't like, in Silicon Valley, nobody likes to mention documents, and they definitely don't want to acknowledge that there's any paper still in existence. But the reality is, without IDP, we wouldn't have LLMs. We wouldn't be doing agentic processing at the scale that's being proposed. So it's absolutely critical. So any of these players in this market, look, these are the businesses. I don't know if they're going to succeed, if they're going to fail. That's all about business, right? But they're in the right place at the right time.
So what I'll make sure I'll do, if you're watching this on via the website or YouTube, there will be show notes. If you're new, we have show notes which we attach to each episode with links. We have extensive IDP research, including an MMI report we did earlier this year to a large-scale study that Dan took charge of, which gives us exactly an insight into what IDP is being used for, where the projects are, what people are doing with it. Results, particularly around paper, will shock you because it seems to have shocked everybody. Not necessarily us, but everybody that read it. That's good. So there will be some details of that. So if you're coming to this new and thinking, well, I didn't really know about IDP, and surprisingly, as we said, this happens quite a lot in our conversations. There's plenty of learning you can get from us, not just from at a vendor level, but also at a kind of quantitative and qualitative level too. Let's move on. Winner number 2 this year is LatticeFlow. I'll talk about LatticeFlow. So let's just set the scene a little bit. One of the things we've heard significantly or consistently through 2025, I had to think what year it was there for a moment, we're showing my age, was research periodically. There's an MIT study that's been cited both correctly and incorrectly many times during the year about how AI projects, particularly generative AI projects, are stalling and not making it out of POCs and pilots into production. Now, whether you believe or don't believe that the specific details of that study, we know this to be the case, and there's all sorts of reasons for that. But one of those reasons, a significant reason, particularly for large enterprises and particularly for those enterprises in heavily regulated industries, just a reminder, all industries are regulated. Some are more regulated than others, and depending where you do business, the breadth of those regulations will change. But making sure that what you were doing around AI meets those regulatory environments, your own internal GRCs, or governance risk and compliance standards, is a real hurdle to pass. You can do all the dev, you can make the stuff really cool, and then it gets to your audit committee, and your audit committee may go, well, it doesn't really meet those standards, and it can take months, if not forever, to try and get that through those areas into production. So LatticeFlow, let's introduce you to them. They are a European software company based in Switzerland. Make your own joke about neutrality there. But one of the things in which they're focused on is helping organizations meet their external requirements, so those external regulations, the ISOs of this world, and also their internal stuff, their GRC, to make sure that their AI applications are suitable before they go live. Now, that falls into kind of a few different areas, and the way you think about it will very much depend if you're deploying these things in Europe or deploying these things in North America, because both continents are taking a slightly different path towards regulation, which is a whole topic, and we won't get into that today. But for the US, they're going for typically a very light regulatory environment. Within the EU, they're going for a more heavily regulatory environment. If you're operating in both, the likelihood is you have to meet both compliances. So what does LatticeFlow do? Interestingly, it's predominantly an on-premise application. There are some bits and pieces you can get at via the web, but predominantly it sits on-premise. And one of the areas it looks at is not just the AI models, we'll come on to that in a second, but it also looks at all of the data labeling that you need to do with your own data, possibly data which has been already been through like an IDP type application to get it into a reasonable format of labeling, to make sure the labeling for the data is likely to be good enough, compliant enough, consistent enough, one, to meet the GRC requirements, but also to make some sense with models. The second part of that is also looking at those models themselves, the individual model providers, the individual model versions, and finding out whether they, in conjunction with the data you already have, are likely to meet your internal requirements, so those internal GRC standards we mentioned, but also the external things that you are looking to meet. So again, ISO, or the EU AI Act, etc. Now, if you're already thinking that sounds like a huge amount of stuff, it is a huge amount of stuff, and it's a huge amount of stuff that most organizations, when they start, don't realize they're going to have to get to. But in order to start conducting business, to actually doing real world stuff using these AI tools, using these AI models, and particularly if you're coming from a financial services or something with an awful lot of PII, personal information that you need to actually do your job, making sure that you're able to handle the data side in compliance, making sure that the models are consistent, able to do that, and that all of them meets the internal and external requirements that you have around regulation is super important. And LatticeFlow is the vendor that we spoke to this year who probably had the best story to tell on that. Alan, with your hat on here as the chairperson of judges, this seems to be a topic that, on the face of it, no one really wants to talk about, because it's super specialist, and two, it's really, really, really hard. But it feels like it's probably of a greater importance than maybe it's the weight of information that we see on LinkedIn about it. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting because it ties back to IDP. These are two areas people don't actually talk very much about, but they're the two areas that without them you got nothing. So and I think we're in this period now where you mentioned the MIT study, but there's so many others, and then there's just pure anecdotal evidence on a massive scale that it's fine to do a demo. Everything works in a demo. It's fine to do a proof of concept on a tightly controlled set of data, but when you get out into the wild of an enterprise, oh my god. So yeah, I mean, it's a bit worrying, frankly, that this isn't talked about more often.
Yeah.
And just anecdotally and sort of being silly about it. But the truth is, as soon as you use words like governance, everybody switches off.
Yep.
I mean, try using the words records management and see what happens to your audience. But the fact is, yeah, you got to have it. I mean, I think I want to get political here, but the reality is, being here in the US, you're right, it's a much lighter touch.
Yeah.
And at times, no touch. And I think, anyway, just finishing on this thought, I think where the concern is that those who don't address this properly now, like immediately, if they're exploring AI and agents, is going to be the fallout at some point, right? Regulations or not, people will sue. And, if you're exposing, sensitive or confidential data, which you almost certainly will be, or coming to decisions which you should never have come to through some convoluted agent that thinks differently, you're going to have to pay the price at some point. So yeah, so this falls very much into the category with IDP, two things that should be talked about an awful lot more and are not. But
yeah, I think
that's going to change.
I mean, there's an awful lot talked about overall observability, right? Observability is a huge subject, right? In fact, we're sitting on the day that Microsoft Ignite starts, and there's a big observability part of the announcements that they're doing for that. But observability is everything from, how many agents have I got doing something? What are those agents doing? How are those agents are licensed? Looking at individual transactions, right? Everything through to, is the agent doing something over there that it shouldn't be doing? So it's an enormously wide thing. Here we're talking about something specific. It's saying we've got a bunch of regulations that we've set for ourselves. There are a bunch of regulations that have been set for us by the operating environments in which we have chosen to transact, right? And we need to meet all of those. And we need to meet all of those from the point of application design, not at the end go, oh, by the way, we've now got to hit our compliance thing, and there's something fundamentally wrong about the way we need to do this. This needs to be built into the way in which you design the products you're building as an organization fairly early, and have as a regular review point. It's not a hurdle or a flaming hoop to jump through at the end, and that's perhaps why it feels like a roadblock. You need to be compliant by design. You need to meet regulation by design within your product. I know for product owners here, they're probably nodding, going, "Well, of course, Matt, we all know this." Well, yeah, we might think we all know it, but this isn't actually the reality of what happens to most projects. There's an awful lot of surprises that happen quite quickly at the end, often in UAT, when someone goes, "Hang on a second, are we supposed to be able to do that?" So hopefully, heading that off early is something that will make those projects run a little bit more smoothly, probably at a lower cost, and certainly with less heartache than before. So the final topic for today, and again, this is something which is covered inside the document for downloading, of which there will be links in the show notes and links on the website, is a little bit about what we're looking for in 2026. Now, here's a checklist of stuff that we're definitely going to be nominating, because we don't know what we're going to be nominating, because it kind of depends what comes through the door in 2026, right? And we can't anticipate what they're going to be. Could be something amazing we're not expecting in January. And because we don't have a specific number of awards to give, last year it was 5, this year it was 2. It will be how many wow moments to meet Alan's methodology that you discussed earlier on. We'll do that. So Dan, what will you be expecting in 2026 maybe that will be your wow moment? I mean, bear in mind, we're doing predictions next month, so let's not get too far into predictions, but what kind of things in 2026 are likely to make you go wow compared to what you've seen already?
Oh, okay. So staying away from the predictions we've already got. One of the hardest things to do with a computer is for a computer to accurately read and understand tables that are embedded in documents.
Yeah.
There are so many startups now in Silicon Valley that are going after this very problem right now. and they fit into the IDP category because essentially that's part of what they're doing. And I mean, here we are in 2025, and we still haven't gotten close to solving that problem. Guys, we've been working on this since my software in 1996, when we were first struggling with how do we represent a 2D table essentially in the middle of text and then make sense out of it with the computer. And so I'll be looking in 2026 to see, who has taken that next level step with tabular data understanding. There's a lot of candidates working out there. I think we'll see it coming from somebody that's using visual language models right now. But it'll be interesting to me to see, if we crack that ceiling.
Okay, that's good. I'll go next, and we'll leave it to Alan to wrap up last of the three of us. I've seen so much product this year, and particularly if I think about the conferences in the fall/autumn that we're in right now, it's like being hit with a product gun often. Now, some of those products are new, some of those products are renamed, some of those products have very similar names to each other, and that in itself is hard to track. It's bewildering for us as analysts. It's completely bewildering for customers, right? That's the feedback we get. It's hard for us to keep up. So it's perhaps less about products. It's more about guiding customers around picking the right products to help them with a path from where they are to where they want to be, which is likely to be guided by AI-derived technology, which I know is a very boring subject, but if I can find vendors that actually have got a nice path, whether you want to call it a maturity model or whatever, I don't really care. Make it academic or not make it academic. Can you help me as a customer determine where I am, plug in the right tools and people and processes into that to give me an outcome, rather than just firing products at me? That's probably the thing that'll make me feel warm and happy when I'm on briefings this year. Okay, how about you, Alan, to wrap up?
Anybody who knows me knows this, what I'm going to say, really, which is verticals.
Verticals.
I didn't actually come up with this phrase. It was on LinkedIn. It was in response to something we published. It was what was the line? Going vertical is no longer a niche strategy. It's a winning strategy. And I can't agree with that more, right? I'm going to be very careful what I say here because I've got an ongoing email discussion with a technical vendor. But they're doing very well in a niche, but they want to tell a horizontal story, right? And I think this is the point. Let's go back to IDP and GRC governance. These are broad, they apply everywhere, right? But here's the point, as we've been making out, they're not applied everywhere. They're hardly ever applied anywhere. So all you have to do if you want success as a technology vendor is find a niche that's underserved and go and actually serve it. Because there's an army of customers out there waiting to hear from you. Dan made the point about CAD drawings, right? So AEC, we've mentioned that, right? Yeah. Architecture, engineering, construction. Lots of small businesses, lots of remote sites, lots of challenges, frankly, right? Yeah, but by God, is that a big business?
Yeah.
Supply chain, which we're always going on about, very similar, right? Very similar challenges. But we're not talking, I can build my technology vendor to 20 million ARR. We're talking about huge sums of money to somebody who can actually go in there and fix some of these problems. So I'm looking forward to those who actually get some kind of focus on something and say, you know what, listen, if a customer wants to come in and it's not in our vertical and we can help them, fine. But we're putting all our effort into this. And I'm not talking about marketing. I'm actually talking about we will put all our effort into understanding those customers' needs and fixing them, right? And I think there's the signs that might be starting to happen, but they're only signs. They're not big signs.
Good. That's a good way. That's a good way to sum us up. So that's it for this year's Innovation Awards kind of summary. Next time we're doing our predictions. So next time it will be 3 2026 productions, as well as coming back from last year to see how well we did. That'll be 30 minutes. We've almost hit time today, which is pretty good. So that's very good for having three of us on, and we all like to talk. Dan, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here as usual.
Awesome, Alan. Good again to have you back. And for everybody else who's joined us, thank you for coming along. Hopefully you'll pop in the next month for the predictions and in the new year for our new year of stuff. So thank you very much, and we'll catch you next month.